So the problem is that it's biased, and it's so extremely biased in one direction or the other, right? There are people who are Sandinista supporters that think they're just great, and that are not even Sandinista supporters, but just people who are, I don't know, are liberal or Democrats in the United States or whatever, leftists elsewhere, that kind of don't see that some of the most liberal Democrats were part of this international terrorism, basically through the CIA, and basically domestic terrorists with the drug drops that were part of that. But they treat the Sandinistas like these were the perfect freedom fighters and everything, and I think there were good people on both sides of the Contras and the Sandinistas, or at least well-intentioned people who weren't just a bunch of psychotic murderers. Okay, and paint all of the Contras as just basically like the CIA-backed draining of the sea death squads. Now, the people on, and they're in the minority of when this issue gets talked about, who are pro-Contra, which many people in the 1980s were pro-Contra. Many Latin Americans were pro-Contra and didn't believe that anything from Iran-Contra, any of that money was actually going to the Contras. But then again, there were three different factions of Contras, three main groups that are under the umbrella term, but were never united in a movement. There was an attempt to, and I'll get into that in the next video. But you have people on, I don't even want to say the right and the left, but the different side of the issue, which they'll say, okay, our side was right and it's justified, and they want to justify the actions of what gets seen as the Republican or whatever, except there was a mix of Republican and Democrats that were supporting the Contras and that were bringing the drugs in. And then from the other side, you have Democrats or leftists or liberals or whatever. And as I realized that outside of the United States, Republican means communist, basically, but not here in the United States. I think everybody knows that. And Democrat usually means like capitalist. You know, Democratic Unionist means the very pro-conservative. But it's different here in the States. Even though that there were plenty of people who, by today's standards, would be described as right-wing, who were jumping up and down screaming about the horrors in El Salvador and the horrors that the CIA-backed Contras were doing. So it's not actually a right-left issue, although it seems that all the videos, the ones that are in English, take either side. And the BBC is, you should know the BBC is useless in conveying news. In his historical stuff, in documentaries, in their science stuff, mainly, they're fine. But when it comes to news, and it comes to portraying at least contemporary political stuff, even looking back 20, 30, 40 years, it's useless. And you can see how they flip and flop on everything, and they'll misrepresent something initially thinking, oh, we're for this, and then they realize, oh wow, it's a lot worse than we knew, and then they have to show the other side, 5-10 years later, and it's kind of embarrassing to watch BBC specials or documentaries on the same topic, and you can see 5 different videos, and it'll flip-flop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, with very vindictive rhetoric, as if they, coming from both sides, ridiculous. But even the stuff that's in Spanish, from what I've seen, there's a lot of stuff out there. Again, it's either pro-Sandinista, Danny Ortega stuff, or it's, to a lesser extent, there's not really many people sticking up for the Contras, which you can, their name was sullied by the CIA-backed craziness, and the School of the Americas, that factors into this too. So if you want to see my video on School of the Americas, or just check out School of the Americas, it's called WinSec now. Scary, creepy shit, and it relates to the draining of the sea and the drying of the ocean, which is one of the most terrifying tactics ever implemented, and it was, the United States spread that poison throughout Latin America. So that's the problem, is that when you look stuff up, and even in writing a lot of times, there's not a clear view. Now, there are many people who are pro-Sandinista, but not pro-modern-day Sandinista, because of the shit that Danny Ortega pulled, and the piñata that was, the piñata was when the Sandinistas were going out of power, when the Civil War stopped and they were in power the last 2 years, they basically took all the stuff that was, you know, basically nationalized and gave it to themselves. Oh, here's a bunch of land that my bureau oversees. It's mine now, so I'm going to get rich. And the excuse whenever they talk to these ex-officials, or sometimes officials that got kicked out and brought back in, was, well, everybody was doing it. Okay, that doesn't make anything. That never justifies anything. Well, everybody was doing it. I mean, that can work for a child. A child can say that. A grown adult who, for 20, 30, 40 years was trying to fight to liberate their country and knew intimately what was going on, you know, as a trusted official, when it's like, oh yeah, I totally robbed the people of land, but, you know, other people were doing it. Hey, weren't you supposed to be standing up for what's right? That's what you based your whole image on, is standing up for what's right and serving the people. So unfortunately, the information is one-sided in either direction about the Contras and the Sandinistas. Go to part either 2 or 3, depending on how you're counting, because of the initial overview. Contras in Paradise is what I was going to title the series, although I think it'll be different now.